This week's movie is The Blob, 1988. It is the perfect Easter movie. It has family, it has friends, and it has all these people being killed. Just like how you'd want to spend Easter. And it has The Blob, which is clearly an allegory for Christ. You know, he lives being hunted by society, just like Jesus did. He was hunted by the Jews, and he dies in an over-the-top fashion, just like Jesus did, for no other reason other than doing just what his nature told him to do, and that is eating people. Now, this movie begins at a football game where Paul Taylor makes a touchdown. And Meg Penny, played by Shawnee Smith, flirts with him with her eyes. And he says he'll ask her out when the time is right. And then he gets tackled into the Gatorade stand, and he asks her out. And then we go to the diner, where the sheriff is making googly eyes at Fran, our diner owner, diner waitress, diner something. And Fran says she can't go to the country music show, but leaves him a note on his receipt that says he gets off at 11. And then we go to our juvenile delinquent, Ryan Flagg, who is smoking and drinking and tries to jump a bridge on his motorcycle but crashes. And we go to our other hero, the old man in the mountain, who takes the beer can, laughs, and walks away. I don't know why this guy's a hero, but he lives his way in a mountain with a dog, and I think that's every man's dream. The Flagg goes back to town. Sheriff says soon Flagg won't be a delinquent anymore. Soon he'll be 18 and be able to go to real jail, where instead of raping you during class, they rape you in the shower in real jail. In the ass. And Flagg goes to his boss, asking to borrow his ratchet set so he can fix his bike. His boss reluctantly agrees, and Flagg goes on his way. Meanwhile, Paul and his friend go to the drugstore. Paul's friend borrows money to buy condoms, and he runs into the preacher there. And he tells the preacher that he's buying condoms for Paul, who just wants to fuck. And Paul seems like an animal because he's in a hurry. This will later come back to haunt Paul. Back in the old man in the mountain, a meteorite crashes, and the old man is crushing cans with a cast iron pan. Once again, a dream of just being an old man in a mountain, to crush cans with a cast iron pan, pet your dog, smoke pot, do crack, drink beer, once in a while shoot at people who come on your property. All those dreams of being an old man in the mountain, maybe someday we'll reach them. But the old man grabs his axe to go check out the meteorite, because I don't know, maybe he's expecting a little green men to come out of the meteorite. But he puts it away when he gets there and grabs a stick. At which point this little blob comes out and then attacks his hand, and he runs off. Paul then gets to Meg's house, meets her family, and meets her dad, who turns out to be the pharmacist, thinking Paul's an animal. And we meet Meg's little brother, Kevin, and his friend Eddie, who are forbidden to see the Garden Tool Massacre movie. And the Garden Tool Massacre movie, as we later see, seems like the kind of movie I'd review on this show. Which I'd love to review it on this show if it was an actual movie. So Kevin says he's spending the night at Eddie's house. And Meg goes out with Paul, who we later see driving and hit the old man, which Brian's running after. So Brian, Paul, Meg, and the old man go to hospital. And first thing the nurse asks, does the old man have insurance? 40 years and nothing has changed. 1988, the first thing they ask is insurance. 2024, the first thing they ask is, do you have insurance? Wonder how long this is going to go on. 2100, first thing they're going to ask is, do you have insurance? 2200, first thing they're going to ask is, do you have insurance? 2300, the little green men behind the counter are going to ask if you have insurance. And then they're going to say, oh, you're a human? Oh, you're meant to go over there and be a slave. But anyways, back to the movie. They put the old man in a room. Paul goes for a soda because he's filling out forms. And he sees the old man has something wrong with him. He screams for a doctor. Doctor comes. The old man has no pulse. Doctor pulls back the blanket, and the old man has no bottom. Paul goes to call the sheriff, and that's when we see the Blob. And the Blob eats Paul. No more Paul anymore, and you thought he was the main character. They take Meg home, where she fakes taking a sleeping pill, and then escapes out the window to go bail out Brian Flagg, who the cops have, and the deputy sheriff is none other than the guy who gets melted with toxic waste in RoboCop. They release Flagg because they have no evidence and no motive, and nothing else except he's at the scene of the crime. So Flagg and Meg go to the diner, which is closing, but they manage to get a cold sandwich and 2 slices of pie before George, Fran's co-worker, gets eaten in the sink by the Blob. And then Meg and Brian hide in the freezer while Fran escapes out the window. Calls the sheriff, but the sheriff is already eaten by the Blob. And now Fran is eaten by the Blob. But Meg and Brian escape, just that though the Reverend comes up and sees the Blob escaping in the storm sewers. And Reverend checks out the diner, where he finds many frozen pieces of the Blob in the freezer section, and takes them for himself in a little container. Though he does break his bottle of liquor, which we all got to feel bad about that. Meg and Brian head up to the mountains again, where they meet the government agents in hazmat suits led by Dr. Meadows. Tells them it's a virus. Now we all know it's not a virus. And they see the deputy again, who goes back to town to try to install the quarantine, which is in effect in town. And they send Meg and Brian back to town in the back of a locked vehicle. Brian escapes thanks to his trusty ratchet. I didn't know you could take locks down with a ratchet, but I've learned that now. So I will be carrying a ratchet from now on and breaking in houses. So Brian escapes to go back up to the mountains to get his motorcycle. Meg goes back to town and realizes her brother and Eddie are in the movie theater, where the Blob is now attacking. So Meg gets her brother and Eddie out of the movie theater, but in a dead-end alley, where they escape down the sewer. And we see Shawnee Smith, who plays Meg, in a white top, soaking wet. It's almost as good as a nude scene. I'm not sure Shawnee Smith has ever done a nude scene, but she needs to do more nude scenes. So Brian Flagg overhears the government agents and Dr. Meadows talking about how it's actually a satellite, not a meteorite, and the government created this thing. And the blob is down in the sewers, and the people down in the sewers are expendable before he gets caught by a man with a gun and beats them with his trusty ratchet. That is his weapon of choice, is a ratchet. I would have went with a gun, a knife, something a little more useful. But nope, a ratchet. A ratchet will do. And then he escapes on his motorcycle into the sewers. Because apparently in this town, their sewer area is so big, you can ride a motorcycle through them. The town I used to live in had that. They had people living in the sewers. It was like Chud, only chuddier. And we didn't eat John Goodman because we were afraid he'd give us a heart attack. But anyways, Eddie gets eaten, Kevin gets out, and the blob turns into Sarlacc trying to get Meg before some government agents show up and shoot the blob long enough to distract it for Meg to get away and hook up with Brian again. And Brian to jump his motorcycle over the blob and meet up with an injured government agent and them to find a way out. But Dr. Meadows closes the sewer top and parks the car over it. But that's when Brian realizes these government agents in the sewers carry bazookas, though they're not supposed to be injuring the blob. Why give them bazookas then? I guess in case they run into a tank. So Brian shoots the sewer top with a bazooka, and they get out. Dr. Meadows gets eaten by the blob, or dissolved by the blob, or whatever the blob does to people. And then the colonel decides to destroy the blob, which just pisses the blob off. And then the blob goes on a holy hell rampage, resulting in the fire government agent with the flamethrower, exploding, catching the preacher on fire, which then Meg uses the fire extinguisher on the preacher and realizes the blob doesn't like the cold. So Brian does the only thing he can do. He goes and gets a big-ass truck that shoots snow. But the blob overturns the truck and has Brian trapped. So Meg gets an AK and a bomb and plants the bomb on the liquid nitrogen and uses the AK to draw the blob near it. But before she can escape, she gets her foot caught, which this is very important. Meg is dressed like Peter Griffin. This is very important to the plot, because this is where Peter Griffin got his looks from in Family Guy, is Meg from the Blob. Brian escapes in time and rescues Meg, and the blob grows up in little bitty frozen blob pieces. And that is the end. And then they get the blob to the ice house to keep him frozen forever. And then we go to the future, where the Reverend is healed from his burns and is preaching about the end of times. And then he goes back to drinking in the back. Someone asks him when the end will come, and he says, God will show me a sign, and it will be soon. And he holds up his mini blob in his little container. Now, this movie is really good. I give it 12 out of 10 stars. It's really good. I like it better than the first one. Really good energy, really good story. I don't like Dr. Meadows. I like watching the Blob eat people and dissolve people. Really gory. Wish Johnny Smith was naked in it. Now it's time for the time you guys all waited for. You guys sat through that whole video patiently, or you just fast forwarded to the end. Either way works for me. It is time for the song. And yes, the song is about the Blob. Now, there's only one problem, and that is my hands are extra shaky today. And so the song probably isn't going to be perfect. I got to rearrange this because that tends to knock it over. Ready? From a meteorite in outer space comes a thing that could destroy the human race. It's sought after by many men, but they get destroyed and cannot stand. It's slimy and it's gooey. It's pink and purple and oozy. It will suck you up and eat you for lunch. It's the Blob. Wipes out women, men, and boys. Rolls over cars and trucks like they're toys. Weapons only make it mad. Oh no, it sucked up Susie's dad. It's slimy and it's oozy gooey. It's pink, purple, and oozy. Will suck you up and eat you for lunch. It's the Blob. Told you the song wasn't perfect. As for next week's video is a children's movie. I don't know which one yet. Haven't decided. But I haven't done children's movie yet. So that's next week's video. It's a children's movie. Enjoy.